When I was a child, one of my favorite books was Alice in Wonderland. It is a beautiful piece of fiction, and not only it is entertaining to read, but also it has a lot of beautiful things you can learn from. One of them that stuck in my head is the following. Alice asked the Cheshire cat, who was sitting in a tree, "What road do I take?" The cat asked, "Where do you want to go?" "I don't know," Alice answered. "Then," said the cat, "it doesn't really matter, does it?" I find it to be a beautiful metaphor. Like, when you don't know where you're going, it doesn't really matter what road you take. This is the way that I felt about the metrics in my team 5 years ago. I did not know where we were trying to get in terms of quality, nor how we measure progress, whether we were moving forward or backwards. And to be honest, I don't know whether Alice was frustrated in this situation in Wonderland, but I definitely was. As an analytical person, I need to be able to measure in order to know that I'm moving. This is why the talk is called Measure It or It Didn't Happen. What I'm going to do in the next 30 minutes is share 3 lessons with you that I learned that helped me throughout all the experimentations that I did in 3 different contexts, and that I hope would help you establish quality goals, choose the right metrics, and bring your quality in your team to a different new level when you come back on Monday. So, my name is Anna. I work at Freeletics. It's a beautiful application. If someone, are you guys using it? Who knows Freeletics? Nice. So we build mobile apps that help you become the best version of yourself, which means nutrition as well as exercises. They tend to be quite tough. And just like in the beginning of your transformation journey, you need a goal. You need a goal as well in the beginning of your quality journey. So my lesson learned number 1, start with a goal. And the first mistake that I need to share with you here is when I joined my second company, I had the brilliant idea of looking and checking out the number of bugs that they had in Jira. There were lots of them. And I was like, whoa, these guys are doing horrible. No way, what am I going to do? And then I started looking one by one, and then I noticed that they logged gem updates, or like library updates, as bugs. They also logged small improvements as bugs. And they basically logged as bugs everything that was not really a user story. So the lesson that I learned here, do not compare the numbers to your previous job. Do not compare the numbers, because the context is so different that those numbers don't make any sense whatsoever. Coming back to the quality goal, I found this to be a very crucial part because it unifies your actions towards a 6 or 3-month period, and you can tell in the end that we achieved this and moved towards the next quality goal. It also makes it easier for people to be on board, for your stakeholders, for your teams, and then you can say, okay, good, we are doing this. In order to understand what the quality goal could be, I found it quite tricky. And namely because there are so many things that we should improve and change. I started by talking to different stakeholders, like my boss, the teams that I was working with, the customer support teams, and trying to identify what problems there were and what can I do as a tester to drive change and improve quality in those areas. Another pitfall here, just like you see the fog in here, that doesn't allow you to see how big the mountain is. Very often, just like this fog, you would have implicit requirements. For instance, my boss wanted the teams that I was working with to improve their quality. They wanted the guys, the developers, to think more in terms of testing, to define better test cases, and to write more tests themselves. However, he also wanted that the developer velocity stays the same. You see the problem there? Especially in the beginning. Very often, if the developers have to adopt a quality mindset, they will take a little bit longer, and that is absolutely normal. If I wouldn't have made this implicit expectation explicit, I would have definitely had a problem down the road. In terms of my quality goal that I'm working towards right now, is this one, release with confidence. Honestly, if you work in a web application, from the moment that you deploy code to production till the moment that you find that it's totally wrong and you have to roll it back, you would have probably a 30-minute time frame, like at most. However, when you're working with mobile, the whole process is a little bit trickier. So you have your development. In the case of Apple, you would have an Apple review that takes up to 10 days, especially in Christmas times. They just take ages. And I would love to talk to someone and learn a little bit more about what they are doing, but that's a different topic. And after that comes the rollout. So even that Apple gave you their okay, and you can move forward with the rollout, your customers have to choose to update. So it's not that you're deployed and all of your users will instantly see the new code. So basically, you have full control up until here. This is why releasing with confidence is so crucial, especially in mobile. It allows our product owners to make smaller experiments, our developers to make all of those refactorings that they always wanted, as well as migrate code from Java to Kotlin or from Objective-C to Swift. And it also allows our designers to get earlier feedback from the users. Now that we defined a quality goal, we have a time frame. There is a time to actually talk about metrics. Let's look at a couple of numbers. This is the number of test cases that I had in my first job. What do you guys think? Is that good? Is that bad? Is that okay? Give me a thumbs up, down. Why? Way too many. Why good?
Great coverage maybe, but who will execute those?
That is exactly my point. This is the number of test cases that were never executed. More than 70% of those 4,000 were never executed. And even if we tried to invest effort into maintaining them, they were basically irrelevant. More than irrelevant, they made us feel good in a situation in which we shouldn't have. This is why vanity metrics are so important. And this is why we have to take them out of our head from the very beginning. Like a vanity metric is, theoretically, this number that makes you feel awesome about yourself in the situation in which you probably shouldn't. For instance, if you come back to my quality goal from earlier, if I were to say the more test cases I have, the closer I get to releasing with confidence, this would be a typical vanity metric, because if I add more test cases, the confidence does not necessarily increase. So I needed to understand and to find metrics that actually were meaningful for my situation, and namely, actionable metrics. That is my lesson 2. The actionable metrics are those who are in a cause-effect relationship with the quality goal. So the metric has to change. If the metric changes, the quality goal has to be adapted as well. So if I move forward, I need to get my quality goal closer. Now, there are 2 ways of defining actionable metrics. You could either say, I want to make my goal measurable, and there is a whole lot of literature about how you can have measurable goals. They call it SMART goals, like specific, actionable, measurable, and tied in time. Or you could try to find actionable metrics towards an unmeasurable goal, like release with confidence. I chose the second. And since the process of defining a quality goal was so tricky for me, I needed help from the developers. So I started by asking them what their current level of confidence is. This is quite counterintuitive. I mean, I as a tester should be able to notice these things. But I found out that just asking, first of all, brought them closer together, and also we were able to define problems. How did I ask? I just sent around a pool where 1 is I'm super confident and 6 is I'm not confident at all. Every single release that I make is a hot fix. I don't know which direction I'm going. We're in Germany, right? One is a good thing. And this poll that I sent around made a problem obvious. It confirmed a gut feeling that I had. It confirmed that we do have a problem with the confidence and releases. And the most important thing, it made it obvious for the developers as well. We were able to sit down and talk about how we feel and what could we do in order to get to a point in which we feel more confident. We learned, for instance, that the quantity of flaky unit tests, I mean, the more flaky unit tests we had, the less confident we felt to proceed with the release. Also, we noticed that when we have a lot of fixes that we make in beta, we feel way less confident to release this to production. I mean, surprise, surprise, right? We also learned that if we would have more end-to-end test scenarios that cover meaningful business cases, use cases, we would be able to say, whatever we released right now, the important functionality is still there. This way, we were able to define actions that we decided to undertake and the measures, and the metrics that would help us measure the movement in those actions. That is defining a baseline. Just like this runner needs this point in time and in space to say, I'm moving from here onwards, we need a baseline. We just defined our initial baseline, which contained our current level of confidence, the number of fixes that we did in the last 3 betas, as well as the percentage of unit tests that we have that were flaky, and also we tied those to the actions that we're planning to undertake. Important point here is the impact. Very often, measuring something influences the process. And also, not only it influences it, it also creates behaviors. Like in this case. I'll let you read this through. Right? This is similar, I mean, not an extreme case like this, but a similar case happened in my previous team. We started organizing postmortems as a measure to learn from our errors and improve continuously. So when we had a major screw-up in production, I would be the person organizing a postmortem, and then we would sit down together and go step by step through the possible ways we could have improved this and what we can do right now in order to definitely avoid it. Having gone through the first couple of postmortems that were painful for everyone, we got to a point in which we were very comfortable with them. And also I had developers scheduling postmortems, not only postmortems for technical topics, but also postmortems for user stories that were not complete and caused us like clarifications down the line. So we were organizing a lot of postmortems. The managers made the relationship between postmortems and quality in a way that they say, oh, the more postmortems you have, the lower your quality. This found its way into the reviews, like the one-on-one reviews that happened on the yearly basis. And let's say people were not happy about it. We stopped organizing postmortems altogether, and we started doing the learning process in other meetings. We call them dev retros. So that does not have the negative implication of a postmortem. So this way you can see how a behavior is created, and this fear of failure is it becomes more important when management or other people around react to the metrics in a way that you didn't expect. So this unexpected is reflected really nicely in this quote here. The law of unintended consequences. So the lesson is, it's crucial to understand the unintended consequences. I mean, you won't be able to predict these things. We're not trying to predict anything. None is good. No one, I mean, humans are not good at that. However, if we are aware that there might be unintended consequences, we're able to react to those down the road and adapt. So, third lesson, the visibility of the metrics and the way that they are trusted. Everyone in the company needs to know what are you measuring. Maybe not everyone will understand, but at least everyone who is in product engineering, this is the department that I'm working at, needs to know what metrics we're measuring, what actions we're taking, what is our quality goal, and where they can find details, who is the contact person for that. This is very important because if the metrics are not visible enough, are not trusted, the moment that you'll say, well, we reached to our goal, people won't believe it. People won't feel that a change has occurred. So throughout the process, it needs to be very, very clear. And also, it stops you from having doubtable metrics. Let me give you an example. In my first job, when I was just trying to learn about testing in general, I noticed that certain developers from my team produced on average more bugs than others. And I had the brilliant idea of correlating that into a number. So I said, this guy produces more bugs than the other. Therefore, I'm going to be more careful with his code, and I'm going to spend more time on the code that he produces. I never made this magic visible, thank God. But it still influenced a lot the way that I behaved, not in a way that was helpful for the team. I learned it fast, however. And had I tried to make this metric visible, someone would have told me that I'm wrong way earlier than I figured it out. This is why the metrics need to be visible. Also, when you define the actionable metrics towards a goal, you might be biased. I, as a tester, tend to be a big fan of automation in general. So I have the feeling that if we add automation, we're going to solve the problem, the world hunger. And you don't. And maybe if someone else would read your metrics and would read the actions that you're trying to take towards your goal, would say, hey, that doesn't really make sense. So it's also a way to get feedback. One thing that I learned is that developers also have used metrics. And especially if you're the first tester in the team, like I am at Freeletics, I'm the first tester, you might want to aggregate the new metrics with the ones that the developers are already in the habit of looking at. For instance, the developers from my teams are measuring the crash-free users, the crash-free sessions, and the app techs. They measure them every single morning. We call this the morning routine. So they come to work, get a coffee, and go through those numbers. If something really pops up, then we are going to take action immediately. The reviews is also one of those. So we're reading through the reviews since yesterday, and if there's something that people are complaining about that we didn't know about, maybe that's a bug. So we would investigate it further and maybe create a story for a future improvement. Aggregating your new metrics with the ones that there is the habit of checking is an idea that I found very useful. And I found that the developers were feeling more attached to the new metrics that I've added. And you need an information radiator. That's a beautiful term for just saying you need a dashboard. This dashboard can look like this, which is kind of cool. This could be automatically updated. However, you could have it totally old school, like this. It doesn't really matter. It's important that you have your quality metrics in a way that is visible, that people know where to find them, and also that your name is somewhere there. So if they have questions, they can say, hey, I'm going to talk to this person, and she's going to help me, or she's going to explain it. And also in the case that a lot of people are asking the same question over and over again, maybe a note to explain why you're measuring or what you're measuring or how that KPI is calculated would be really helpful. In my case, I have a board. It is on the second floor where we all sit. That says, look, this is our current confidence level. this number from 1 to 6. Then this is the trend of our regressions. This is the trend of our bugs that we find in beta phase, in production. This is the trend of percentage of flaky unit tests. And this is how we're moving towards the business scenarios that we wanted to automate. And I need to add a footnote here. We did have end-to-end tests that no one trusted. So we decided to start it from the beginning, and we decided specifically in advance what business scenarios we needed to be covered so we feel confident. We added the requirement of having both positive and negative scenarios, and every single day when every single sprint we start anew, we would take one of those scenarios, add a test for it, make sure that test actually is stable enough, and then increase the number of covered business scenarios with automation. One last point is no cheating. What I mean by this is if something was a bug in the beginning of your quality journey, it has to be a bug when you finish it. It sounds very obvious. However, if we think about the behaviors that you trigger by measuring, and also the fact that the team wants to succeed, very often, subconsciously or consciously, instead of logging a bug, if you're measuring the number of bugs and you see how that changes, what trend you have, people are going to say, look, I'm not going to log this bug because the number is going to look worse. Or I'm not going to log it as a bug, I'm going to log it as a change request. It's almost a change request. Or I could write it as a small subtask in a story. So it's not so obvious, so it doesn't go into the KPIs, so our numbers look good. It happened to me over and over again. I did it myself without noticing, because you want to succeed so badly, but sometimes you don't know and you don't notice that you're that you're cheating a little bit around the road. So I learned that I need to be very honest with the KPIs that we have. So if something was a bug, it has to be logged as a bug. And also, this is why we have metrics. So if the numbers are not going in the direction that you would expect, it's also a nice moment to stop, think through, and maybe decide on another course of action, or notice what actually you're doing wrong. I'm going to take questions here before I conclude. So, any questions? I heard this was a really tricky topic. When I was having beers yesterday, I was very concerned about this talk because people were like, "Oh, what is your favorite metric?" And I was like, "I don't really have one." And what is your the most complex metrics, and how are you quantifying? A friend told me that he had an ex-test manager who had this totally complicated formula in order to aggregate how the different teams were doing. And I felt totally unsure because my talk is only about the experience that I have. So, go ahead.
Do you measure your metrics themselves? So like lifetime, how long does it take until you change a metric? Things like that. So taking it one level, not only measuring metrics in themselves.
So the question is whether I measure the metrics themselves? Can you elaborate a little bit? I think I didn't get you.
One thing would be, if you define a metric, how long does it take until you decide that either it has fulfilled its goals, so it's lifetime ends, or you find something that's wrong with it, so you change it.
Right.
What
I see what you mean. So the question is, I don't know if everyone can hear it. So the question is, how do you measure your metrics, and how do you figure out whether it's relevant or not? For me, as I said, lesson 1, try to see whether the change in that metric influences the quality goal. So for instance, if I were to measure, to get to a point in which we say have 100% non-flaky unit tests, and I run the confidence in release pool again, and that didn't change, maybe taking that out altogether would be a good idea. Or if that metric doesn't feel right anymore, I think it has to be taken out. Usually when I talk about quality goals, I'm talking 3 to 6 months. So I assume by the end of this 3 to 6 months, it would be quite clear whether you achieved it, whether you're moving in the right direction in general, or whether you should be changing road, changing metrics, and something's not working out. Right. I think that's a tricky one. The question was whether I make all the metrics visible to the team, or I have my own metrics. I have the bad experience of having private metrics. So right now, I try to be as transparent as possible, and I try to measure exactly what's on there. I find it more difficult, to be honest, because if I were to have private metrics that would give me a little bit more information than the others, it would be easier. I would feel like I would be in a little bit of a privileged position, and it would be easier for me. However, for me, it's crucial that this is a team effort. So I'm one developer, I'm working with 4 teams. I'm one Agile tester, I'm working with 4 teams. I need these actions to be performed by developers and to be driven by developers. I'm starting things, I'm trying to move things forward, I'm helping, I'm coaching, but I won't be able to do things myself. And this is why I chose to have the quality metrics very, very transparent, as well as the goals where we were going. And this is why for me it was the whole process of let's talk about it. How do you feel? What can you do? What actions do you think we should be doing? Even if I thought about unit tests being flaky and that bringing less confidence from the moment zero, I needed the developers to say that, because I need them to be engaged in the process. And this is why I think it's easier, in my context at least, to have them as public as possible. Maybe it's different in yours. I see. The question was whether I added the metrics from the very beginning, or it was more of an incremental process of adding them one by one. In this current context, we decided together what actions we are going to take and how we're going to measure the success of those actions. So that was the whole process about it. It was a huge workshop. So we said, we don't feel confident right now. We want to be more confident. We are right now X on the scale. We want to get 1 point up. We decided together on what actions we're going to take. For instance, we're going to disable the flaky unit tests and fix them and enable them one by one. How do we measure that? We measure that by the percentage of flaky unit tests. Then action number 2, we decided that we want to have less bugs in the beta version, because the bugs in the beta version were giving us the feeling that the next version of the app is not good enough. So what do? We start testing a little bit earlier. We start adding more detailed, better test cases, functional testing in each user story, and so on and so forth. So we decided the metric based on the action that we were taking. And yes, we decided all of the metrics from the very beginning. However, I see the point of changing them. However, I think if we were to work on longer goals, like 1 year or so, then that would be the point of that would have the point of like readjusting the metrics down the road. Good. The time is over. I'm going to conclude now, and all the questions that you have left, I'll be glad to take them later. And also, let's have a beer if you totally not agree with me. I really want to see that one. Good. So, what I wanted to leave you with is 3 lessons. A, define a quality goal. Measuring something without a quality goal has proven useless for me, and left me alone with my metrics rather than help me move forward. Step 2, choose actionable metrics rather than vanity metrics. Make sure that they make sense in the context. Maybe take the suggestions from these awesome people and verify them more often than I did. And step 3, make sure they are visible and they are trusted by the team. I hope this helps you, and thank you.